Welcome to Intuitive Human. Our mission is to normalize intuitive experiences for humanity. We're connecting with people just like you, excavating their highly impactful, view-shifting, intuitive experiences, diving deeply into what it actually feels like when you go beyond the veil. In this interview, Jessica Freites shares her inner experience of channeling the Arcturians, where she describes in detail how channeling different beings feels and how it's in service to her clients. We hope you see your own reflection in these stories, empirically proving intuition really does exist, and in such a way so that you may discover your own intuitive human.
My name is Jessica Freites. I am a healer. That word means a lot of things, primarily with sound, energy, channeling, and so on. I'm also astrologer and performance artist, but I don't really separate the art from the healing because they kind of inform one another. I'm 34 years old. Started having intuitive experiences, like intense ones, since I was super little. 27 is when I started feeling, I don't want to say in control of it.
Accustomed
on
to
board
it?
with it.
Okay.
The flow of it started picking up pretty rapidly. So where it was like, okay, this is part of your life. My family is very intuitive and was very kind of witchy, mystical, you could say. So those conversations, those events or experiences were not uncommon. I remember seeing things, feeling things, also the dreams a lot when I was really young, being kind of clairvoyant or knowing things were gonna happen or knowing somebody was gonna call or show up, that kind of stuff, you know, that was always pretty standard. I was in Miami, Florida. At this time, I had already become really sensitive. Basically, my energy sensitivity had increased a lot. Probably a year and change beforehand. I already knew I was really sensitive in other ways, more so because my health had been impacted really intensely whenever I was really stressed or what have you. And so I was very familiar with using my mind and focus and I guess energy in a way to heal myself, but it was more from a deconstruction to neutrality place, as opposed to having these like very other-realmly experiences, if that makes sense. Yeah, I was hanging out with my friend. She's also very, very sensitive, which kind of helps because then you don't feel like you're in this alone or that you're crazy.
Some validation there.
Validation is great. And it also helps because, yeah, you're in this process. And she had a tendency to see what I would feel. We both would see and feel, but I definitely was more the feeler. And she was definitely more the seer. And so we're just hanging out, chilling on her couch, whatever. Because at this point, it had started happening very regularly. I would feel like something just hit me.
Okay.
Energetically, right? And it's like, whoa, I'm dizzy or woozy or stuff is moving around or whatever. Most of the time my eyes are closed in this process once that's happening because it's so kind of energetically overwhelming, but it felt good. At the time she was smoking cigarettes and she had been trying to stop smoking cigarettes. I think went to go lay down. I remember, I was sitting on the couch. She went to go lay on the carpet. These beings, they always speak in we. The beings I'm referring to specifically are called the Arcturians. It's a class of ETs. I kind of feel bad labeling them because my logical brain can only conceive so much, but right. I'm just, that's the information I was given and had been given multiple times. Because at this point, the little clues kept coming.
Okay. And
so, they came, they always speak in we, and the message was that they were going to do healing work on her. At the time, I think bring sound as well. I channel beings and a lot of times sound comes through. They sound super angelic. Yeah, basically energy starts flowing through and I start moving the energy. But they were working on her and I was kind of being like booted up or prepared. And it's really interesting because different entities feel very different. They feel very futuristic and almost kind of robotic.
The Arcturians.
Yes, specifically. Okay. And other people who have experienced me when I'm in that state, if my hands touch them or are near them, they say the same thing. They're like, oh, it feels very robotic or futuristic and kind of sterile but loving. Like you feel safe. There's this safety it's not like, oh, we're gonna test on the people. It's more like, hey, we're elevating your state. It just feels like this very loving computer update. I don't know how else to describe it.
And when you said booted up, you mean like a system?
Yeah, like a system
turning
update.
on, or a system update.
Yes,
yeah,
it feels like a system
very
update.
mechanized or computer centric.
Yes, it's interesting because it's like when you see electronic events or parties or music, but that's like very loving and a lot of synth and very warm. I'm a music person, so I think in terms of that way. So it's like this warmness, but it's still almost digital.
What is the we, speaking in we, do you think is about? Or what does it feel like qualitatively?
It feels like they have attained a certain level of unity consciousness to where the need for ego isn't, or identity. Not to say that that's bad. I think us humans, it's vital and a tool and awesome in a lot of ways. But I think just wherever they're at, whatever realm or planet or what have you, they don't need that. Not to say that they don't have different roles, but they kind of just, they speak on behalf of their collective because they're so aware of their connectedness. So yeah, she's laying down. They're working on her. I'm getting my like update, scan, whatever, lights, all the things. And yeah, then the message is, okay, it's time for we're gonna use your body to work on her. So I do. And afterwards, her and I we share notes, yes. Right? Yes. And the information, and a lot of it was her lungs. And I believe she was coughing quite a bit. And the information was that, she got the same information. When I stood up, right before I stood up, they told her, we're going to use her body now to work on you. Okay. And she also got the robotic thing. She felt like she was on a table, but like in a doctor's room, like a surgery room kind of thing, but all very advanced technology, like lights, lines, not poking and prodding, just like, okay, we're going to update. I didn't mean like some avatar kind of thing. And specifically her lungs, because she had been smoking, and they were like, we need you to not smoke because you have healing work to do. Okay. For her. That was the message I got. That was the message she got. And after that, she stopped smoking.
You found the stop smoking button through the Arcturians.
I know. Depending on how, I guess, far they're coming from. I mean, I know that's human terms, right? Mm-hmm. Because we're very dense. Yes. I guess you could say how to bridge the density gap. Yes. However far they're coming from to bridge the density gap, it feels kind of like, you know, when you're going up the roller coaster or when you're dropping? Yes. And there's that feeling of like, I'm leaving my body, right? Mm-hmm. I'm super not on the ground. Right. It's like that. It feels like that. Mm-hmm. Like you're free falling. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know other people and mediums and channels, when that started happening for them, they didn't like it.
Can you tell us a little bit more just about Arcturian beings?
I will try to do you all justice.
Yes.
It had come up actually through dreams, through people I had met. I had kept meeting it, you know, because these things happen in like just day-to-day life. So you get bits and clues, and then you research a little, and then you get more life experiences, and then you research. So it's interesting because my mom was very into Edgar Cayce, who was a very famous, they used to call him the Sleeping Prophet, psychic channel from the early 1900s. And when I started Googling Arcturians, one of the things that came up was Edgar Cayce on the Arcturians. He spoke about them. And I was like, oh, snap, this is awesome. And the things that I have read, or through my own personal experiences, they are super scientific, very connected to kind of the same culture of Atlantis. Okay. In terms of being part of a society where the technology is super, like really advanced. I'm like, it's just through experience. They feel like they're in the angelic realm. they just feel, just like, how do I describe this?
Yeah.
They don't feel like,
a human feels
yeah, they don't feel like human.
That's for sure.
They feel like they're advanced, like way past this.
Okay.
They don't feel like, I mean, the thing is, not all ET beings are nice, right? It's really loving though, but very kind of like, it's like their job is to help humanity kind of level up.
And you've said that they feel loving a few times.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what that sensation or feel like? How do you know that it's love?
Man, that's hard. That's like saying, how do you know you're in love with somebody,
Yeah.
right? Because it feels euphoric. I'm pretty clear on when something is not love, because it 100% feels euphoric and loving without one sliver of any other agenda. They're not asking for information. They're not trying to do anything. If I say I don't want to do this right now, they go away. Mm-hmm. You know, which I think is an important thing to note where channeling is concerned. Mm-hmm. You know, sometimes people hear channeling or that word or mediumship, yes, and it's like, whoa, chill out. It's like, look, I can say I don't want to do this. I have free will to do that. And they back off, right?
I think that's a really critical point to make, that there is a choice point.
Completely.
In any of these intuitive experiences, no matter how dramatic or extreme or subtle, that we do have a choice point to make to surrender, yes, or retreat.
Yes.
And then making those choices takes courage and going into the unknown sometimes.
For sure.
And maybe even a lot of the times when you choose to surrender or retreat, you walk into that unknown space that nobody's necessarily, you don't have a roadmap for.
Yeah, because I was very clear on my own intentions. Whenever they would come, first off, I was never trying to channel at that time. Second of all, I was very clear every single day that I only want to attract healing energy into my life, you know, light, love. If I felt like I was going to channel, I would say, allow this to only be light, love, for higher purposes. I was always very, very clear on like
intent and direction.
And I think it's important to remember that your words and your input is powerful, just like you were saying. And also the sounds, I sound like I'm in a choir when they come.
What do angels sound like?
It's kind of this really, you know, it's funny because I have a colleague of mine who heard me in that state once, and she was like, you sound like the woman in The Fifth Element. When it's them.
And The Fifth Element is a movie.
Yes, The Fifth Element is a movie, and there's a blue lady who's singing like opera, angel, that's what they sound like.
Okay.
Them specifically. I have another entity that I channel quite a bit that sounds totally different. And
so then it's related to sound, because you're channeling them, and while they sometimes take over your body to do maybe the mechanized system updates or whatever it is we'll talk about in just a few minutes, but they also, you use your voice as a sounding tool as well. And depending on the entity, the sound will be different.
Yes.
Have you noticed a difference with whoever you're working on and which being presents itself to correlate or make any distinctions between what the person's needing versus who will be channeled? Is there any kind of correlation there?
And let me just say, sometimes they do like verbal information, or I write down verbal information. Again, it's very like medical techie stuff, but nature-esque too. Depending on what, so it's interesting because I have this being that's a Taino, which is the original native inhabitants of the Caribbean, right? He's with me pretty regularly, all the time. He tends to come before they come. Okay. Not always, most of the time, especially if I'm working on somebody, if I'm doing healing work on someone. And sometimes it's just him, right? But a lot of times he comes preliminarily. And the message that I got with that was because and it's a very much lower sound, very grounding, feels really different.
Would you say the frequency is slower?
Yes.
Versus the Arcturians are higher?
Super high.
Okay.
Yeah.
Closer together.
Exactly. And it's almost like he comes to prepare my body or my field or what have you to receive them. I've also noticed, not always, but a lot of times if I'm working on somebody who has a very physically dense issue, like if the disease has already progressed to where it's like really latent in the body, his energy stays around a little longer.
I see. Because of the physicality.
Yeah, because of the physicality element.
And just to link back, if there's any Caribbean heritage or anything like that, where were your parents from?
My mom is Puerto Rican and my dad's Dominican.
Okay.
And so it's actually interesting you asked that, because for a long time I was like, Taino, alien. What is this?
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
But then you go into a lot of the creation stories of a lot of indigenous cultures and they talk about star people. So after a while it was like, oh, okay, this isn't so random. And it doesn't need to be. Like, I don't need to understand it. I've experienced it enough times to where I'm like, this is my reality and truth, right? Obviously, Caribbean people are a mix of a lot of different cultures.
Yes.
And I definitely have influences and entities from other parts of the world, for sure.
Okay.
But I would say the Taino presence is the one that's most predominant in my healing work. But that may change. I don't know, you know, because that's the other thing too, is like these things come also for your own healing.
Right.
So
the Taino will take you into or stick around longer for the physical healing that might need to take place because of the frequency.
yes.
And so in the land of sound, frequency matters. And we're saying the Arcturians, or the alien, if we can do the spectrum of the beings.
Them, those guys out there.
The non-human, more alien kind of spectrum is a higher frequency, which is a tighter
Yes.
in the sound wave,
Yes.
squished together. And then the Taino is a looser
Yes.
frequency with more space in between.
Yes.
Because of the denseness of the physical body and of gravity and the field that
we
we're
live
in, the
in
3D.
we live in a 3D realm. Yeah.
So physical plane of existence versus an angelic plane
Yeah.
of existence.
More
if we could-
ethereal.
How does the human body feel robotic? Like, how do they describe, like, when you're in there, they're in you being in there, using the body to do these things that you're doing. Tell us a little bit more about the feeling being kind of mechanized or robotic or futuristic.
Well, it's funny because for me at first, I didn't even really have the words until other people were like, your hands didn't feel like human hands. And they had no idea. There was a couple people who had no idea what I was channeling. They just thought, oh, she's singing really beautifully right now and like the energy's intense, right? But they also were like, hey, your hands don't feel human. What's up with that? And I'm like, oh, those guys, you know? And it's funny because there's a part of me that's very logical and rational. So for a long time, it was like, okay, you feel it too?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not crazy.
Right.
Because you feel crazy.
You do.
I did, at least. You know, it's like, it's a big pill to swallow and to say confidently, at least for me. Like, I was cool with all the intuitive stuff, but now we're getting into aliens. It's like, come on, bro.
Right.
But as far as for me, feeling wise, like I said, it feels a lot stronger. The hit is like, you're just like, oh, snap. Okay. I'm like, sometimes I feel my body I feel my body very big with other entities, but it's like less big this way and more big this way. I don't know how to describe it. The the voice is much more monotone. Okay. When there is a voice.
Meaning like less emotional, maybe?
Yeah, it's just very like update, update, update. And I'll like, when I'm in that space, there's also not always, first off, you just feel on. I feel everything vibrating super strong, which is in general when I channel, but with them probably stronger. Like it's like somebody takes the amperage and just goes, all right, we're gonna turn you all the way up. I see that kind of this grid, like those time-space grids in those models, and there's like a ball of light, but has very defined shapes, like geometric shapes, and it's almost like when a computer is doing an update, and it's like, please wait after this system update, and there's like a light, and it's like swirling or whatever, and it's funny because me, conscious Jessica, is like, am I for real getting an update right now? Is this actually happening?
Right.
But yeah,
because the wildness of which is totally planned. I don't mean like wild, like not planned.
Yeah.
But the wildness of the reality that's happening, would it be like holographic? Like you could be in this room.
That's the word.
And it's
that's
laying.
The word.
Yeah.
I'm like looking for the word. It's very holographic. Not what I'm looking at externally because my eyes are closed most of the time. Okay. If I'm seeing anything, actually, that's not true. There's a couple times where I have had my eyes open and I see like holographic shapes of light.
Yes.
And I'm like, what is that?
So it's like suspended. You can see this 3D thing. It's very much like a holographic experience.
And internally, even when my eyes are closed, it's holographic.
Yeah. Got you. Okay.
Can I, instead of robotic, I want to say precision. Okay. Because I think robotic, that's more so what other people have described. And I think it's because they didn't feel like the humanness of my hands, whatever that means. It's almost just more linear, if that makes sense. So robotic, but more in this like clean, linear, I feel like humans
precise.
We're a little more like,
not precise.
We're not precise. We're not precise.
We're more general.
Yeah, it's very logical.
Okay, very good.
That's the word, logic. There's a lot of logic.
When you learn about sound at a deeper level, sound and light are the same. And so it makes sense to me that light is coming with the use of sound, that it also comes. So sound would be a more dense form of light.
Exactly.
In some ways. And then the frequency of light and the frequency of sound, it's all very much tied together.
And it makes sense why I'm working on the body with the sound because we're dense, right?
Exactly.
So.
Yeah. And also just to note that light also works on the body for healing, infrared
100%.
Lights or like whatever. But
100%.
how has the experience of channeling in general, because that seems to be one of your strongest intuitive pathways, if we can even minimalize it into an intuitive pathway. How has that impacted your life and the life of others around you?
Oh God, it's changed my life. I'm still very human. I'm still a human. It makes me excited to live. It's not something I'm doing all the time. I think for a while I was maybe, I don't want to say depressed, but it's really, well, actually, let me step back. I think the channeling came at a very interesting time because my mom when I started channeling regularly, my mom passed away a few months after that. There was that moment where she was in hospice and I was her caretaker, and there's that whole process where it's like, oh my God, you're dying. Okay, all right. I had to really check in with myself, and it's like, okay, do you really believe that there's more than this?
Those moments take you face to face with that, don't
they?
they?
It's like, okay, this is undeniable. You have been channeling nonstop for, the last few months. Spirit, creator, God, whatever you want to call that, is trying to show you how expansive it is. So this isn't the end. And so it just makes life, even when things are hard in 3D land, easier. And they're still hard because we're human, right? I think for me, it just kind of expanded my everything. And also now I use it in my work. So I'm able to facilitate and use it to help others, whether it's other people who are sensitives, intuitives, or just people who need help on their healing.
So it's just as like, do you see a presupposition or things that might have set you up to be a channeler versus somebody else who is a dreamer, or like that's their primary pathways, that they're a dreamer, but you're a channeler. So are there any things that in your life that you've noticed that set you up to be a channeler?
Sure.
Or are you just like born that way and that's just how it is? Or
well, it's funny because I still dream a lot, have a lot of intuitive dreams, have other things. And I think we all kind of have various quote unquote skill sets. But yeah, I used to hear stories about, like, my mom used to see spirits, but she never wanted to channel. She knew she could. She was afraid of it. My aunt would see spirits. My grandmother channeled a couple times. And so it running in the family is a thing. For the year before I started actively channeling, for like a year and a half, I kept bumping into other mediums and channels super randomly, and always helping them through the process. Random but not, right? And always helping them through the process. I kind of knew what to do. They were usually freaking out. I just felt really comfortable. So when it started happening to me, it was like, oh, okay, I know what to do because I was able to be on the other side.
Do you feel like intuitive experiences like these are a part of the human experience, or that they're reserved for special magical people?
I definitely think everyone has intuition, has access to their intuition. We all have a sixth sense. I do feel like certain people are more predisposed to that being their path or their thing. Just like certain people are more predisposed to being a basketball player or being a singer, you know, it's part talent or affinity. And it's also part like you got to train, not train so much to do it, but train to maintain it.
Yeah.
And not like.
And to balance, find the harmony.
To balance, because
yeah.
you can really feel like this is overwhelming or this is a gift or both.
Yes.
And then you figure out like, okay, what works for me? What are my tools? How do I?
And we are finding each other.
Yes.
And there's a boldness in being your truth.
Yes.
And feeling your essence completely, and then finding and drawing and attracting those people who are also on your same wavelength.
Completely.
So we exist.
We're out there. And there are people who are funky, right? And their intentions are not always that great. But the more grounded you are, the more you're just like, okay, that's not for me. Like, just like you can't put everybody of one ethnicity or culture in a stereotype group. It's the same thing with intuitive things or spirituality. It's like, hey, there are some funky people, but there's some really good people, right?
So find the clarity.
Find the clarity.
Keep listening.
Yeah.
And the answers will come.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Jess. We appreciate your story.
Thank you.
And I hope it impacts many people and that people realize that these experiences can happen and that we're not crazy and
a little crazy. No, we're not crazy.
And in the context of whatever that word means, it can mean many things.
Yeah.
But in this case, even though we've looked into it and, found our path through that.
For sure.
That, these things are real and that they happen and that they're useful and in service of people as well.
Exactly.
So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Woohoo.
Okie doke.
That's a wrap.